What's going on, everybody? It's FREEDO and Weagle back again for a meta discussion fairly soon after our most recent one that was centered around Doomfist, but this time there's so many other characters that got changed quite severely that so many different things are going to be changing all at once. There's a lot of little changes on characters that might not seem as impactful as they actually are, but they are. Things are going to be changing majorly, and we want to sort of break down and hopefully predict where the next meta comp will be, but we might have some interesting conclusions to that. So where do we want to start off with this one?
I think we're going to start with what me and FREEDO were just arguing about off mic, which is Zarya's change with Grav, because the first thing I said to him was I really am not sure about this change. And I have a few reasons for that. I mean, the one thing it does do is it does wreck dive comp. So things are diving in, trying to get your backline. It's pretty much impossible to now really mess up a Zarya Graviton, because if you get 2 or 3 things in there, it's pretty much rip. Damage is so good now that even if they drop the beat, you're probably still going to burn through that in a Grav anyway. And Zarya has instantly gone from a place where she's getting destroyed by dive to a place where you can pick her and leverage just her ultimate alone to counteract dive in a pretty strong way. Now, I don't know what FREEDO's exact opinion is on this, but I feel that it's a little bit broken. I feel like it's a little bit weird, but at the same time, I don't know if that is the change that we needed in order to bring dive in line, or at least bring Zarya a little bit more into countering a dive comp rather than just getting destroyed by it.
Maybe it's like a fiendish streak in me, but I feel like justice has been served to dive comp in that way, where Zarya now guarantees a team fight, where before, the thing is with Zarya, right? She still had a decent mid-fight against dive, especially against punishing D.Va, and I might get into that a little bit more in a second, but them being able to escape it, or D.Va potentially being able to eat it, meant that the windows to drop a Graviton, the marginal spaces where you could get a Grav that hit anything and also dodge defense matrix, were so small that it wasn't worth running. When you have a character like Zarya where her ultimate takes forever to charge, in comparison, a D.Va ult can get guaranteed value, at least 1 kill, right? Whereas Grav, you charge it forever and you seemingly can maybe get nothing out of it. There was little reason to pick Zarya in that off-tank position. Well, now it's devastating, and if you've been stuck in a Grav or you've been setting up Gravs yourself, I think you might be shocked to realize how impactful that is. Like, it definitely is undeniably valuable every time you pop it, as long as it doesn't get countered in some way. But like Liam said, even if you do drop the beat, like, everybody's so tightly in there that following up on that, I don't even think you want to drop the beat in a Grav unless your numbers are at such a good advantage and she kind of is wasting it or something. Mercy's going to get countered by it because she gets stuck in it. Even if you just trap the Mercy with it, it might be very good. You can trap Nanoblade with it. Graviton is sick, and I think it deserves to be sick. Zarya being a thing means that you can also counteract the dive tanks in an interesting way, because if the Winston D.Va combo is trying to dive something, well, if you have Zarya Rein, for instance, and I think Rein is quite interesting as well right now, both of them can shoot through defense matrix. One of the biggest problems with D.Va being so strong and defining everything was that all the relevant damage in the game, more or less, got blocked by defense matrix. And well, now when both of your tanks, not just Winston, can shoot through it quite effectively and punishingly, especially because Zarya gets charged and gets to scary levels of damage, D.Va playing that way, I think, is just done. Like, you can counter it right then and there. But the problem I have with all this speculation and forethought is because it's so hard to predict, right, where these things are going. So many different things are changing at the same time that I'm a little bit hesitant this time. A lot of the times I feel kind of confident in saying this is going to go this way, but I don't know where that's going to end up. Does that mean D.Va just has to outplay Zarya a little bit smarter? Does dive comp still stay just as strong, but you have to play it even better? I'm not exactly sure.
The thing for me with the Graviton, back to that a little bit, is as someone that plays a lot of the mobility heroes, to instantly have that strip from you and you're smacking shift and you're like, please swift strike out, please blink out, and none of your abilities work. It feels horrible. And another thing to what FREEDO says about D.Va now not being so good, Doomfist is also coming out into the competitive meta this week, and Doomfist is very good also at knocking D.Va around, and Zarya feels really strong against Doomfist because a lot of his abilities, I feel, are quite easy to see coming, and as Zarya, you want people to hit you to charge you, and I feel like at least good Zaryas versus mediocre Doomfists are going to get free charge for days, meaning more grabs, meaning more team wipes that the enemy team cannot avoid. And I see Zarya being pretty strong if Doomfist becomes really strong. What I have also found interesting is that since this patch, I've gone into a few different competitive games and people are running Zarya and Reinhardt already. And with Reinhardt, it's kind of nice to see him back. We was having a bit of a discussion before this and we were talking about how when there's a certain comp that's specifically better for whatever reason than other comps, even if it's only 1% better than the next best comp, we've always seen that top meta comp be the one that's run like 99% of the time. I'm hoping that the way that this meta shift will go is in a way where we can actually counter pick a little bit. Maybe you see they've got a dive comp, so you actually can take Reinhardt and Zarya and Doomfist to try and counteract that, or maybe you would still also have the option of running dive comp as well.
Last point about the Graviton, I think players often forget how to outplay certain aspects of the game when they don't see it for a long time. So that's another problem of the perspective, right? Jeff Kaplan spoke about this. We've mentioned it in videos prior, that the expectations of what should happen sometimes color our viewing of what is good. So, for instance, Zarya might look better if everyone forgets how to disperse to avoid a grab, right? You see her coming, you forget the range of where it is, you forget how you should be aligned to stop it. So if she starts getting outplayed that way and she only gets 1 or 2 in her grab, that might mean that it's not as good as you think. Same thing with Rein, where Rein might look better than he even might be because people just forget how to play. Oh, there's a shield he can hold up. That's right, we can't damage through that. We're really screwed if we try to get hit by his hammer. Those things, they kind of surprise you sometimes. Now, with the 1% better one way or another, the problem with the logic of counter-picking is that players, especially pros, want to take the most guaranteed safe bets, the thing that's going to most clearly be the easiest route to victory, even if another alternative strategy might be just as successful. I mean, either way, you're trying to win in one way or another, but if it's either too hard or too flimsy, it's going to be deemed not meta for whatever reason. Now, that's the problem that I have in envisioning a glorious meta where we can counterpick, because if you were to pick something that is going to get counterpicked, why would you pick it? You know what I mean? Ideally, we would say because, well, there's so many characters in the game that everything's going to get countered by something, so you at least have to commit to a strategy, but that's never happened before. Without a doubt, though, it seems that a slow comp is viable because there's just too many things that are good again that prop it up and protect it. So those of you who were very annoyed with the mobility meta, I think can have your worries put to rest at this point, because McCree is better, Roadhog likely is going to get there, maybe even Junkrat too, but all these other factors of the slower tanks, especially Reinhardt and Zarya was very popular back in the day. All these different characters that are at least somewhat good. We may not know where the chips are going to fall in terms of the top 8 or so heroes that are going to define the meta. That's very hard to call right now. But I think without a doubt, we're not going to be in a mobility meta necessarily. Mobility characters might still be strong in some way, especially in wide open maps where Doomfist might be weak. But other comps are definitely going to be good, without a doubt.
For me, McCree's the interesting one. I think that maybe he's the overlooked hero at the minute that's got a change that I think makes a big difference. And I was talking to this about Eddie as well, and he was explaining to me that he didn't realize as McCree, you can actually stun a Genji that's deflecting. Now, you could do that anyway. You've always been able to do that, as long as you just get it outside the hitbox. And when you learn how to do it, it's actually quite simple. But beforehand, as a Genji, and as a Genji player myself, I know when that stun's coming, and I know that I don't even have to deflect it. If I just press shift when I get stunned, the momentum carries on and he can't hit me. Well, now that that has changed, that makes a huge difference to a lot of different heroes. Even Winston, who I don't think McCree is terrible against, he can't even jump away properly. That stun that you have is going to make a big difference to all of these different characters. If a Tracer blinks in before when you throw your stun, it's always a hard shot to hit. But now, it's at least 5 times easier to hit a target than it has ever been when you stun them. So people will have to be more scared of that stun, and people will have to respect it. And the fact that it's going to be respected and feared may just be enough to kind of bring down that dive capability anyway. I don't see why we couldn't see Roadhog and McCree being really strong when Roadhog gets changed in the same comp as a massive defensive thing against dive comp, because I feel like that stun is just undeniably amazing now. Massively overlooked by the whole community. I've not really seen many people running him or talking about it, especially how good it is against the heroes that are the hardest to kill in the game.
What would be beautiful to see is my dream that all compositions and strategies will be very map specific, where these different elements that come into play that we're discussing, right, a defensive style comp versus a dive comp, will be based upon the geometry of the map rather than the meta. That would be a great way to play, because then we can discuss more intricate strategies of how to defend or attack certain areas of different maps, and it not just be so simple as run the best heroes in the game or 2-2-2 or whatever. If we get there, that's going to be a really sick place to be playing Overwatch, but I can't guarantee it to you guys. Don't be mad at me if that doesn't happen, but I hope that is the case.
Well, I have a really strong opinion on this, actually. This is already in the game. It's not noticed or respected as what it is. So, for example, let's talk King's Row. Always Widow on attack. No one cares that there's a Widow on attack there because there's massive lines of sight. Nice high ground for Widows to get picks on. Torbjorn, Hollywood, on the stairs in that disgusting place at the back that everyone hates to try and get that Torb turret. Absolutely amazing. Everyone knows that that's good and no one gets mad about it. Thinking about how you build a team comp around a certain map or around a certain job is eventually where Overwatch will hopefully get to, because that's like the best place for it. Being able to build a comp on a certain map like Hanamura, one of my favorite comps ever, not necessarily because it was fun to play or was super effective, but her first point Hanamura, you would have Soldier, Mei, Torbjorn, maybe a Rein, one healer, or a Sombra in there as well, and you can put these different heroes in the support role, but don't think of it as support, think of it as utility, or don't even think of it as 2-2-2. You think, what is the best comp I can build here to make the objective easier to do? What are we building around? What synergy are we making? The fact that, as FREEDO says, Doomfist might be great on King's Row streets where everything's closed, but not so great in a wide open area. When we all start learning more and more about where certain heroes are better, just like the Torbjorn and Widow example, but in a much deeper way, is where I think Overwatch in general will become more respected and it'll be more obvious when to run these comps, when to do these things, not just 2-2-2, we need a healer, we need a tank. Well, what tank do we need on this map? What healer do we need on this map? What DPS is bad on this map? Do we want a Hanzo on defense here? No, but on attack, he's much better, so we'll hold off on the Hanzo. We'll have Torb on this map because it's good. Like, Fire is terrible on some maps, for example, but dominant on others. I think that the more that we all learn this, I think it could go to a really good place. And I think that all of these changes, hopefully, a really good step towards that version of Overwatch that, you know, could maybe be a thing in the future.
I think you're right. I think to a large degree that does exist, and sometimes we as players overlook how much it does, especially when we watch pro tournaments. You see mostly the same heroes, but I don't think the games get respect enough for where the wrinkles of the strategies do lie. Kind of comes down to the game just being more and more balanced over time, theoretically, that we do reach that point, and hopefully we're getting to it. The finals of Apex saw lots of counterpicking back and forth. A lot of heroes that you might think aren't necessarily meta. A lot of things tried and sometimes failed even, but those counterpicks definitely exist. And I think they exist way more in matchmaking actually than they do in pro play, but because we see pros play a very strict style of Overwatch, that it gets assumed that that's defining what is best, but it's best in that context, right? And in matchmaking, the game already, I think, even in the current meta, we think was very suitable to many counterpicking strategies, and hopefully that just continues to evolve over the course of the game.
Yeah, it's definitely true, and another one, I won't go too far into it, but it's another matchmaking thing, and that is people's concern about the meta, but how often was Dive actually run? People were getting really frustrated at Dive and how it was dominating their games, but really, it wasn't. I play at multiple ranks over different accounts all the way up until top 500 games on a regular basis. And you only get 1 in 50 games at the top level that's actually running a dive comp. And I think that a lot of people were misplacing their frustrations about one tricks and SR system actually into the meta. And even though the pros may be a bit bored of it, I don't think it's true that actually dive has been really dominating high levels of play. Some heroes maybe, but the actual comps themselves have been fairly fluid, I would say. I think that throwing in a Torbjorn against badly run dive comps in matchmaking, I can tell you from personal experience, is really good. Really strong. And a lot of people, when they go, oh no, we need to have XYZ hero because dive, but really no one's actually running that top meta thing. So context is of course always what matters, and each game you get into and each map, as we've just mentioned, is also what matters. So I think lots of heroes viable, especially in matchmaking terms. I think a lot of them are going to be pickable. Concerned about Doomfist. Doomfist is an amazing hero, really fun to play. In my opinion, would argue, I think he might be the hardest hero in the game. He's a top 3, in my opinion, incredibly hard to use and more niche than people realize. In terms of how niche, I would say nearly as niche as Hanzo. I would say you could be very careful where you take Doomfist. Massive target, easy to hit, not a dive hero. But if you can get in the right abilities, and abilities per minute, which I think may be a term that gets used for Doomfist a lot down the line, how often you can land your abilities to do more damage and things like that, I think he can be really good. But I am concerned about him being overpicked in matchmaking for a while. That's one concern I have just about the game, not necessarily about the meta.
Well, that's it for today's meta discussion. A lot of things flying around at once. What do you guys think? Let us know in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like. It really does help us out and lets us know that you're enjoying the content. If you haven't already, please hit subscribe because we upload each and every day. So you're going to want to hit the bell icon so that you join the notification squad so you get notified when our videos go live. Linked in the description, you can check out our Twitter and our Discord page where you can interact with our community and find teammates to pair up with. That's been it for FREEDO and Weagle here today for Your Overwatch. We'll see you guys next time.
So